what does it mean to you that God is sovereign?
Okay, glad to answer that. First of all, the Bible doesn't use the word sovereign. Well, I should say the older translations don't. You'll find some newer translations that might use the word sovereign in some ways, but not usually of God. But God is sovereign. We know that because he's called a king, and a king is a sovereign by definition. He's called the father, and in the household, the father is sovereign. He's called a master, and a master is sovereign over his servants and so forth. So that God is called king or master or father are terms of authority. And the word sovereignty means authority. Sovereignty means unchallengeable authority, final authority. The king in his kingdom, at least in biblical times, could make any decision he wanted to do. He could order somebody dead to die if he wanted to, even without a trial. He could confiscate their land, as we see King Ahab doing. And so we have, kings could just kind of do what they wanted to do. And that's sovereignty means basically being in supreme authority and basically being able to do things without having to answer to anyone else. That's what the word means. Now, God is sovereign in that sense because God created all things. He has the right to do whatever he wants. He's got the authority. If he didn't like what's going on earth enough, if he disliked it enough, he could just smash it and vaporize it. And, he'd be within his rights. He's got the authority to do that. He owns it. Now, where I don't agree with Calvinist ideas of sovereignty, they add to the term sovereignty something that's not inherent in the word sovereignty. And what they add is meticulous providence. Now, meticulous providence might be an unfamiliar word, but providence means that God is doing things providentially, and meticulous means he's doing it right down to the last detail. So it would be meticulous providence would be that God is down to the last detail ordaining everything that happens and making everything happen that happens. And nothing can happen except that he has ordained it to happen. And I would call that micromanagement. And a person who's a sovereign might be a micromanager or not. If I'm, let's just say I own a company and I'm sovereign over that company, my employees, I own it. And so I can make any decision I want about policies or whatever. My employees have to submit to me if I'm the owner of the company. But the way I manage the company is my decision. I could micromanage it and not let anyone make any decisions of their own, or I could give responsibility to people. I could give management roles to people. I could even let the lower echelon of workers have certain liberty to make certain decisions. That would not challenge my sovereignty because I'm still in charge. It's that I, as the one in charge, am making the decision to let these people have that much flexibility. I don't have to, but I can, and so can God. God is sovereign. He could do whatever he wants to do. People like, I won't name any names, but certain Calvinists that I've talked to and read, they talk as if there's anything that God doesn't ordain to happen, and it happens, and he didn't ordain it, then he's not sovereign. Well, that's not true. That's just silly. That's suggesting that being sovereign means you have to ordain every detail of what happens. That's the Calvinist view, of course. It's meticulous providence. But that's not true. If God is sovereign, he can decide what he wants to do. He can give people free will. He can let people determine things for themselves to a point. He can intervene whenever he wants to, but he doesn't have to intervene into everything. He doesn't have to ordain everything. That's his business if he wants to or not. And the Bible indicates he does not.